Facts don't govern, narratives govern. This is about the story that we tell. The conflict over the control of the narrative has taken precedence over a, if you will, evidence-based and rational implementation of policy. And when you throw race into the mix, it just gets tough. I can give many examples, and not only in the debate about family and family structure. Of course, Moynihan was right. He was right in 1965 about the condition of the African-American family and how it had been changing. He was right about the implication that Ron Haskins has mentioned to the effect that the consequence of this social transformation amongst African-Americans would make our embrace of the newly opened opportunities more difficult. He was right to the extent that he insinuated that this was a matter not only of the African-American social landscape, but a matter of importance to the nation as a whole. Of course he was right about that. Those who had the hunch, Moynihan was not really a social scientist, come on. But he was a very effective policy intellectual who had some interesting things to say, and he had a hunch. Those who had the hunch that the unraveling of the traditional family spelled real trouble for our society have been shown to be right. Now, I just want to make a couple of points about this. So what is it has consequences, but then what do we do, okay? Cultural engineering is not exact science. It's not something that I would want to bet my life on. You can pull on this string and unravel the fabric of social institution, but reweaving that fabric, going back in the other direction, is a very difficult thing to do. The tools that the state has available, our welfare and assistance policies, our tax policies and so on, are very, very crude. And one is pushing against a zeitgeist that has moved very far from the 1950s, restoring the traditional family. I mean, I saw the title, and with respect to organizers, I almost laughed because it is such a futile objective. Traditional family? I have a dear friend, his name is David Blankenhorn. He runs an institution in New York City called the Institute for American Values. He's a good man. He wrote a book, I don't know, 25 years or more ago called Fatherless America, in which he was lamenting the denigration of the role of fatherhood within American culture. And David has embraced gay marriage, and I don't criticize him for having done so, not in the least. My son is a gay man, for that matter. But he's done so in part out of the desperate need to find allies in defense of marriage per se. Part of his motivation is simply, they're for marriage, I'm for them. I'm looking for allies for marriage, and I don't see that many of them around. Now, it would be easy to get ideological here, to start wagging my finger at the left-wing feminists who wanted to destroy the family and so forth and so on, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to lose the weight of what I'm trying to say about political intellectual difficulty that we've wandered into amidst partisanship, because as soon as I say that, everyone will run to their respective corners and put up their defenses. But you know, Pat Moynihan was a friend of mine. I knew Daniel Patrick Moynihan. I was in the audience in 1985, that would be 30 years ago, when he came to the Kennedy School at Harvard and gave the Godkin Lectures, which were later published as his book, Family and Nation, in which he tried to do the impossible, defend his own intellectual contribution, and at the same time, defend the political program of the Democratic Party. He took a real shot at it. Okay? But it wasn't only family matters. Defining deviancy down, anybody remember that? This was also Pat Moynihan. The character of our intellectual discourse, our ability to be honest with each other, to call a spade, one might say, with trepidation. Look at the discourse that's going on now in the aftermath of Ferguson and Baltimore and so forth. People are writing on the op-ed pages of serious newspapers that if there hadn't been a riot, there wouldn't have been justice, without any sense of self-consciousness or irony. Right. That, you mean that's the way we get justice? Through riots? Is that justice? Okay. People are saying that, as has been mentioned here, I think Jason actually mentioned it, are saying that the very evocation of cultural argument is already a betrayal of equality in the country. We can't even talk about it. I don't want this to just be a lament, so I'm going to conclude my little remarks here with a suggestion. We desperately need leadership here. Someone has got to push against the prevailing tide. Somebody has got to have the courage to say something, even though they know that 95%, my friend John McWhorter says, if you go and try and tell black intellectuals and opinion writers, let's restore the black family, maybe you'll get 2 out of 10, maybe you'll get 3 out of 10 to agree, and if they write that in the op-ed, they'll be snowed under by an avalanche of reaction and so forth and so on. They got to write it anyway. The President of the United States has to say it anyway. When the President of the United States is the first African American to hold the most powerful office in the land, he's got to say it anyway. I voted twice for Barack Obama. I mean him no disrespect, I intend him no ill will, but I'm so deeply disappointed that the events that have transpired in the last 6 months have not called forth from him the kind of counter-cultural leadership. When I say counter-cultural, I mean against the prevailing zeitgeist that wants to account for all of these matters in terms of absent opportunity, tacit racism, psychological impairment of police officers. There is absent opportunity. There's plenty of racism out there, and some police need to be worked on. But at the root here is a failure, now a half-century ongoing, of African-American society to be able to respond effectively to the opportunities out there. You're not supposed to say this. People get on leaky boats and risk their lives to get here from every continent on the planet. And by and large, once they get off those boats, they do pretty well. I think the system, with its flaws, is working pretty well. I think it's unavoidable, the question, you people, what's up? Okay? And that's a question that we people should be asking first and foremost of ourselves. Thank you.